Poor single dad finds beaten, paralyzed old widow on roadside shock to discover who she is. Everyone froze. A struggling single dad driving through a foggy rural road at dawn, spotting a crumpled figure in a ditch. He pulls over, heart pounding, and discovers an elderly woman brutally beaten, blooded, and unresponsive, setting an immediate tone of suspense and urgency as he rushes to her aid, unaware that this chance encounter will unravel his entire life. Before we begin the beautiful story, please subscribe, it's free, and it makes my day 100% better. Also like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. The rain hammered down on the cracked asphalt like divine judgment, each drop exploding against the windshield of Kingston's battered 2003 Honda Civic. The wipers scraped back and forth in their dying rhythm, squeak, thump, squeak, thump, barely clearing the deluge enough for him to see the winding country road ahead. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night in October, and Kingston Morrison was bone-tired. The kind of tired that seeps into your marrow and makes your very soul ache. He'd just finished a double shift at the warehouse, 16 hours of loading boxes, operating forklifts, and pretending his lower back wasn't screaming with every movement. His daughter, 7-year-old Mia, was waiting at home with Mrs. Chen, the elderly neighbor who watched her for far less than she deserved. Kingston had exactly $13.42 in his wallet, half a tank of gas, and 3 days until payday. This was his life now. Had been for the past 2 years, ever since Sarah left. He didn't like to think about Sarah. Thinking about Sarah meant remembering how she'd looked at him that last morning, not with anger or hatred, but with something worse. Pity. Disappointment. The look you give someone who's failed, who'll always fail, who isn't enough and never will be. I can't do this anymore, she'd said, her suitcase already packed. I can't watch you drown and pull us down with you. Mia had been 5 then. Too young to understand why Mommy was leaving, old enough to know something was breaking that could never be fixed. Kingston blinked hard, forcing the memory away. The rain was getting heavier, turning the world beyond his windshield into a liquid blur of darkness and distant headlights. He should pull over, wait it out. But every minute sitting on the side of the road was a minute Mrs. Chen was staying up past her bedtime. A minute Mia was wondering if Daddy was okay. So he pressed on, hunched over the steering wheel, squinting into the storm. That's when he saw her. At first, it was just a pale shape on the shoulder of the road, a trick of the light, maybe, or a discarded top. But as his headlights swept across the form, Kingston's breath caught in his throat. It was a person. A woman. Lying motionless in the mud and rain. Jesus, he whispered, his foot instinctively hitting the brake. The car fishtailed slightly on the wet road before coming to a stop about 20 feet past the figure. Kingston sat frozen for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. Every true crime documentary he'd ever half-watched while folding laundry flooded his mind. Scams. Ambushes. People who pretended to be hurt to lure good Samaritans into traps. But what if she was really hurt? What if she was dying? What if someone had driven past Mia like this? The thought galvanized him. Kingston threw the car into park, flicked on his hazard lights, and burst out into the rain. Within seconds, he was soaked to the skin, his work shirt clinging to his chest as he ran back toward the motionless figure. Up close, the situation was worse than he'd imagined. The woman was elderly, 70, maybe older, with long silver hair that spread around her head like a halo in the mud. Her dress, once cream-colored, was now stained with dirt, grass, and something darker. Blood. Her face was a mass of bruises, one eye swollen shut, her lips split open. She lay at an unnatural angle, one arm twisted beneath her, the other flung out toward the road as if she'd been reaching for help. Mum. Kingston dropped to his knees beside her, heedless of the mud soaking through his jeans. Can you hear me? No response. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths, but her eyes remained closed. Kingston's hands hovered over her, unsure where to touch, how to help. He'd taken a first aid course years ago at a long-forgotten job, but his mind was blank with panic. Don't move her, that was something. Spinal injuries. But she was lying in the rain, in the cold, bleeding. Okay, he muttered to himself, fumbling for his phone. His fingers were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to unlock the screen. No signal. Of course there was no signal. This stretch of Route 42 was a dead zone. Everyone knew that. He looked down at the woman again. In the glow of his phone's flashlight, he could see more details. The bruises weren't just on her face. They covered her arms, her neck, visible through the torn fabric of her dress. Someone had beaten this woman. Badly. And then left her here to die. Rage surged through Kingston, hot and sudden. What kind of monster? The woman's eye flickered open. The one that wasn't swollen shut. It was a pale blue, clouded with pain and confusion, and it focused on Kingston's face with desperate intensity. Help, she whispered, the word barely audible over the drumming rain. Please. Help. I've got you, Kingston said, and he meant it with every fibre of his being. I'm going to get you out of here. Just hold on. He knew he shouldn't move her. Knew it could make things worse. But leaving her here while he drove to find a signal wasn't an option either. So Kingston did the only thing he could think of. He made a decision and prayed it was the right one. As gently as possible, he slid one arm under her shoulders and the other under her knees. She cried out, a thin, animal sound of agony, and Kingston's heart broke a little. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, he murmured, lifting her from the mud. She was lighter than he expected, fragile as bird bones in his arms. I've got you. You're going to be okay. He carried her to his car, managing somehow to open the back door and ease her onto the seat. She moaned again, her head lolling to one side. Kingston grabbed his work jacket from the front seat and draped it over her, then cranked the heat as high as it would go. Stay with me, he said, meeting her eye in the rearview mirror as he threw the car into drive. What's your name? Can you tell me your name? Her lips moved, but no sound came out. It's okay, don't try to talk. I'm Kingston. I'm going to get you to a hospital. He drove faster than he should have on the rain-slicked roads, one eye on the woman in his backseat, one on the road ahead. It took 14 minutes, 14 agonizing minutes, before his phone buzzed with a signal. He immediately called 911, told them he was bringing in a beating victim, gave them his ETA. The woman's eye had closed again. Her breathing was getting shallower. Come on, Kingston urged, his voice cracking. Come on, stay with me. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. He didn't know if he was trying to convince her or himself. 23 minutes after finding her, Kingston screeched into the ambulance bay of County General Hospital. Nurses and orderlies swarmed the car before he'd even put it in park, extracting the woman with efficient, practiced movements. Someone was asking Kingston questions. What happened? Where did he find her? Did he see who did this? But the words seemed to come from very far away. He watched them wheel her through the automatic doors, watched them disappear into the fluorescent bright corridors, and suddenly felt more alone than he had in years. Sir. A police officer had appeared at his elbow, notepad in hand. I need to get a statement from you. Kingston nodded numbly and began to tell his story. He didn't make it home until 3:17 a.m. Mrs. Chen had fallen asleep on his couch, and Mia was curled up in her bed, her small hand clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since infancy. Kingston paid Mrs. Chen double what he'd promised, money he couldn't afford, and collapsed into bed still wearing his rain-soaked clothes. He dreamed of pale blue eyes and reaching hands and the sound of rain on asphalt. The next morning, Kingston dropped Mia at school and headed to the hospital. He told himself it was just to check on the woman, to make sure she was okay. But there was something else drawing him there, some instinct he couldn't name. The ICU nurse at the desk looked up as he approached. Can I help you? I brought someone in last night. An elderly woman, assault victim. I found her on Route 42. I just wanted to see if she made it. The nurse's expression softened. You're Mr. Morrison? The one who brought in Jane Doe? Is that what you're calling her? She hasn't been able to tell us her name yet. She's in serious condition, but stable. You saved her life, you know. Another hour out in that rain. She shook her head. Do you want to see her? Kingston nodded. The nurse led him through a maze of corridors to a room where machines beeped softly and tubes and wires seemed to sprout from every surface. The woman from the road lay in the bed, looking smaller and more fragile than ever. Her face was clean now, the bruises standing out in vivid purples and yellows against her pale skin. Her silver hair had been brushed back from her face, but it was her eyes that arrested Kingston's attention. They were open, both of them now, and fixed on him with an intensity that made him take a step back. You, she rasped, her voice barely above a whisper. You came back. Kingston moved closer to the bed. How are you feeling? Like I've been beaten half to death and left for dead on the side of a road, she said, and there was dark humor in her voice that surprised him. Which, I suppose, is accurate. The police want to know what happened. Who did this to you? Something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe, or calculation. I don't remember, she said quickly. Too quickly. It's all fuzzy. Kingston stuttered her. She was lying. He didn't know how he knew, but he was certain of it. What's your name? He asked gently. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, Augustina. Augustina Castellanos. The name meant nothing to Kingston. Should it have? Do you have family, Augustina? Someone I can call? No, she said, and the word was final as a coffin lid closing. No family. Not anymore. There was a story there, Kingston thought. A long and probably tragic one. The doctors say you're paralyzed, he said quietly. From the waist down. The beating damaged your spine. Augustina's face didn't change, but something in her eyes went dead. Yes, she said. They told me. I'm so sorry. You saved my life, mister? Morrison. Kingston Morrison. But just Kingston is fine. Kingston, she repeated, as if tasting the name. An unusual name. My mother had unusual taste. The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. You're a good man, Kingston Morrison. A rare thing in this world. He didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. You have a child, Augustina said suddenly. It wasn't a question. Kingston blinked. How did you? There's a finger painting in your jacket pocket. The one you covered me with. She gestured weakly toward the chair where his jacket was draped. I saw it when the nurses were going through your things to identify you. Kingston pulled out the crumpled paper from his pocket. It was MIA's latest masterpiece, a stick figure family labeled Me, Daddy, and Rainbow, their cat. He'd forgotten it was in there. My daughter, he said, his voice softening. Mia. She's 7. She's lucky to have a father who stops for strangers in the rain. My wife didn't think so, Kingston said before he could stop himself. Then, embarrassed, sorry. You don't need to hear about my problems. On the contrary, Augustina said, I find myself with nothing but time to hear about other people's problems. My own are rather overwhelming at the moment. So Kingston told her. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the painkillers making her seem non-threatening, or maybe it was because she was a stranger and strangers were sometimes easier to talk to than friends. He told her about Sarah leaving, about working 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads, about the constant, grinding worry that he wasn't enough, that he was failing Mia the way he'd failed everything else. Augustina listened without interruption, her blue eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Do you know what I see when I look at you, Kingston Morrison? He shook his head. I see a man who works himself to the bone for his child. A man who stops in the rain for a dying stranger. A man who came back to the hospital to check on someone he doesn't know, even though he has 1,000 other things he needs to do. She paused. Your wife was a fool. Kingston felt his throat tighten. Thank you, he managed. Don't thank me yet. Augustina said cryptically. We've only just met. The investigation begins. Detective Maria Santos had been with the county sheriff's department for 15 years, and she'd learned to trust her instincts. Right now, her instincts were screaming that something about the Augustina Castellanos case didn't add up. She stood in the hospital room 3 days after Kingston had brought the woman in, studying the elderly victim with a cop's assessing eye. Augustina Castellanos, if that was even her real name, sat propped up in her hospital bed, her face still a mess of healing bruises, but her eyes sharp and alert. Mrs. Castellanos, Maria said, pulling up a chair. I need to ask you some questions about the assault. I've told the other officers, Augustina said wearily. I don't remember. Right. You don't remember who beat you. You don't remember how you ended up on Route 42. You don't remember anything about that night. Maria leaned forward. The thing is, Mrs. Castellanos, I don't believe you. Augustina's expression didn't change. I'm sorry my traumatic brain injury is inconvenient for your investigation, detective. I ran your name, Maria continued, ignoring the sarcasm. Augustina Castellanos. There are 3 women by that name in the state. One is 26 and living in Portland. One is 45 and teaching math in Eugene. The third died in 1987. She paused. So who are you really? Augustina's jaw tightened. I've lived a quiet life. I don't have much of a paper trail. No paper trail is suspicious in itself. No credit cards, no utility bills, no property records, nothing. It's like you didn't exist until the night Kingston Morrison found you bleeding out in the rain. Maria pulled out her phone and showed Augustina a photo. We found this about half a mile from where you were found. It was a black Mercedes, abandoned on the shoulder, driver's side door hanging open. The interior was splattered with blood. Is this your car, Mrs. Castellanos? I don't know, Augustina said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. The registration is fake. The VIN has been filed off. This is a ghost car, Mrs. Castellanos. The kind of car people use when they don't want to be traced. Maria leaned back. So let me tell you what I think happened. I think you were running from something. Or someone. I think you got caught. And I think you're terrified it's going to happen again. Augustina's hands trembled slightly on the blanket. If I tell you, she said slowly, if I tell you what really happened, can you protect me? Maria's pulse quickened. That depends on what you're running from. But before Augustina could answer, the door burst open. A man in an expensive suit strode in, followed by a flustered nurse. Sir, you can't just, the nurse protested. I'm her attorney, the man said smoothly, producing a business card. Richard Thornton, Thornton and Associates. My client will not be answering any more questions without legal counsel present. Maria's eyes narrowed. Your client. You work fast, Mr. Thornton. She's only been conscious for 3 days. Nevertheless. Thornton positioned himself between Maria and Augustina's bed. This interview is over. Maria looked past him to Augustina, who had gone pale. The old woman's eyes were wide with what looked like fear. But fear of what? The detective? Or the lawyer who'd just shown up to protect her? Fine, Maria said, standing. She handed Augustina a card. If you want to talk, call me. Anytime. As she left, she heard Thornton speaking in low, urgent tones to Augustina. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. This wasn't a lawyer reassuring his client. This was a warning. Maria pulled out her phone as she walked back to her car. Time to dig deeper into who Augustina Castellanos really was, and who wanted her dead. Meanwhile, Kingston was dealing with problems of his own. MIA's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had called him into a conference. MIA's been acting out, she said, her voice kind but firm. Fighting with other children, refusing to do her work. This isn't like her. Kingston rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar weight of failure settling over his shoulders. I'll talk to her. Mr. Morrison. Kingston. Mrs. Patterson leaned forward. I know things have been hard since your wife left, and I know you're doing your best. But Mia needs consistency right now. She needs to know that her world is stable. I'm working on it, Kingston said, hating how defensive he sounded. That night, he tried to talk to Mia while she picked at her dinner, mac and cheese from a box, the third time that week. Mrs. Patterson says you've been having a hard time at school. Mia shrugged, not meeting his eyes. Bug, you can talk to me. What's going on? Nothing, she muttered. Mia. Why do you keep going to the hospital? She burst out suddenly, her eyes filling with tears. Are you sick? Are you going to die like Grandpa? Kingston's heart broke. His father had died 6 months ago. Cancer, quick and brutal. Mia had been devastated. Oh, baby, no. He pulled her into his arms. I'm not sick. I promise. I've been visiting someone who's hurt. The lady I found on the road, remember? I told you about her. Why? Mia asked, her voice muffled against his shirt. Because she doesn't have anyone else. We don't have anyone else either, Mia said, and the simple truth of it stung. Kingston held her tighter. You have me. You will always have me. But even as he said it, he wondered if that was enough. The next day, Kingston got a call from the hospital. Augustina was being discharged, technically against medical advice, but she'd signed the paperwork and there was nothing they could do to stop her. She asked for you, the nurse said. Said you were the only person she trusted. Kingston found Augustina in her room, dressed in clothes that someone must have brought her, a simple grey dress and cardigan. She was in a wheelchair, her face set in grim determination. They want me to go to a nursing home, she said without preamble. One of those places where they park old people in front of televisions until they die. Augustina. I'd rather die, she said flatly. Then, more quietly, I probably will die. Soon. Kingston pulled up a chair. What are you talking about? She studied him for a long moment, as if weighing whether to trust him. Finally, she spoke. I need to tell you who I really am, and then you can decide if you want to walk away. Kingston waited. My real name is Augustina Castellanos. That part is true. But I'm not a helpless old widow who was randomly attacked. She took a shaky breath. I'm the widow of Vincent Castellanos. The name meant nothing to Kingston. He shook his head. Vincent Castellanos ran the largest drug trafficking operation in the Pacific Northwest for 30 years. When he died 5 years ago, his empire was worth over $500 million. Kingston's mouth went dry. I didn't know, Augustina continued, her voice bitter. Not for the first 20 years of our marriage. I thought Vincent was a businessman. Import-export, he said. I was just the dutiful wife, raising our children, keeping house, not asking questions I should have asked. Children. Kingston managed. 3. Marcus, Daniel, and Isabella. Marcus and Daniel followed in their father's footsteps. Isabella. Her voice broke. Isabella wanted nothing to do with the family business. She tried to get out. They killed her for it. Made it look like a car accident. Jesus, Kingston whispered. When Vincent died, he left everything to me. Not because he loved me. He stopped loving me decades ago, if he ever did, but because he knew what it would do to my sons. It drove them insane. All that power, all that money, and the old woman had control of it. Why didn't you just give it to them? Because I'd finally learned the truth about what my family was. What they'd done. The people they'd hurt. The lives they'd destroyed. Augustina's hands clenched in her lap. I wanted to make it right. I contacted the FBI. Told them I'd testify against Marcus and Daniel. Help them dismantle the entire organization. In exchange for immunity and witness protection. And your sons found out, Kingston said, understanding dawning. They found out. They came for me. Marcus and Daniel and 3 of their men. They beat me, intending to kill me. But I fought back. I shot 2 of them before they got the gun away from me. They threw me in a car, drove me out to the woods to finish the job. She touched her spine gently. Marcus did this. My own son. Kicked me until my back broke. And then they dumped me by the side of the road and drove away, assuming I'd bleed out before anyone found me. Kingston sat in stunned silence. But you found me, Augustina said softly. You stopped. You saved me. And now? She laughed bitterly. Now I'm useless to the FBI. I can't walk. I can't run. I'm a liability. What about witness protection? The agent I was working with is dead. Killed in what they're calling a random robbery 3 weeks ago. I think my sons got to him. And I think they'll come for me again the moment they realize I survived. Then you need police protection. From whom? Augustina's voice rose. My sons have cops on their payroll. Judges. Politicians. That lawyer who showed up in my hospital room? One of theirs, making sure I know they're watching. She reached out and grabbed Kingston's hand. I have nowhere to go. No one to trust. Except you. Kingston stared at her. What are you asking me? Let me stay with you. Just for a little while, until I can figure out what to do next. I know it's too much to ask. I know you have your daughter to think about. But Kingston. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You're the only person in this world who's shown me kindness without wanting something in return. You're the only person I trust. This is insane, Kingston said. Your sons are drug dealers who tried to kill you. If they find you at my place. They won't, Augustina said urgently. They think I'm dead. As long as I stay out of sight, as long as I stay off their radar, you'll be safe. I promise. Kingston thought of Mia. Thought of the tiny apartment they lived in, barely big enough for the two of them. Thought of the danger he'd be inviting into their lives. But he also thought of Augustina's eyes in the rain, pleading for help. Thought of what Mia had said. We don't have anyone else either. Maybe they could help each other. Okay, he heard himself say. You can stay. But the first sign of trouble, the first hint that your sons know where you are, you're gone. I won't risk my daughter's safety. Thank you, Augustina breathed. Thank you, Kingston. I'll find a way to repay you, I swear it. Kingston didn't know it then, but those words would change everything. Moving Augustina into his apartment was, Kingston reflected, possibly the worst decision he'd ever made. And he'd made some pretty terrible decisions in his life. The apartment was a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better days, probably around 1972. There was no elevator. Kingston had to carry Augustina up 3 flights of stairs while she protested weakly and Mia watched with wide, uncertain eyes. Who is she? Mia asked for the 3rd time as Kingston settled Augustina in his bedroom, the only space big enough for the wheelchair to maneuver. A friend, Kingston said, already exhausted. She's going to stay with us for a little while. Why? Because she needs help, and we are going to help her. Mia crossed her arms. Where are you going to sleep? The couch. Where's my room? Kingston's heart sank. He'd forgotten. You'll still have your room, Bug. Nothing's changing. But everything was changing, and they both knew it. That first night was chaos. Augustina needed help with everything. Getting to the bathroom, getting dressed, taking her medications. Kingston had never been a caretaker before, and his awkward attempts at assistance left them both embarrassed and frustrated. I've got it, Augustina snapped when he tried to help her into bed. You clearly don't, Kingston shot back, tired and irritable. They glared at each other. Then Augustina's face crumpled. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry. This is all so humiliating. Kingston's anger evaporated. He sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. I'm sorry too. I don't know what I'm doing. That makes 2 of us. They looked at each other and, despite everything, laughed. It was a small moment of connection in the midst of chaos, but it helped. Over the next few days, they developed a routine. Kingston would wake at 5 a.m., help Augustina with her morning needs, get Mia ready for school, and then rush off to his warehouse job. Mrs. Chen would check in on Augustina during the day, bringing her lunch and keeping her company. Kingston would come home, help Augustina with dinner and evening medications, spend time with Mia, and then collapse into exhausted sleep on the couch. It was unsustainable, and Kingston knew it. He was running himself into the ground. But something unexpected happened. Augustina, despite her paralysis and chronic pain, started to help. It began small. Kingston came home one day to find she'd helped Mia with her homework, something he'd been too tired to do properly for weeks. Another day, she'd given Mrs. Chen a recipe for the Cuban soup her grandmother used to make, and the apartment filled with the rich aroma of garlic and cumin. Then she started telling Mia stories. Kingston would come home to find them in the bedroom, Mia curled up on the chair beside Augustina's wheelchair, listening with rapt attention as the old woman spun tales of far-off places and brave heroes. "Tell me about the princess who wasn't afraid of dragons," Mia would demand. And Augustina would smile and begin. "Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a castle made of ice." The stories were beautiful, intricate things, full of adventure and danger and triumph. Kingston would listen from the hallway, marveling at the way Augustina brought them to life. "You're good with her," he said one night after Mia had gone to bed. "I had a daughter once," Augustina said quietly. "Isabella. She would have been about your age now. 32, 33. Would have been. She died. I told you. You said it was made to look like an accident. What really happened?" Augustina was quiet for a long time. Isabella fell in love with someone her brothers didn't approve of. A federal prosecutor. They saw it as a betrayal. They handled it. God, Augustina. The prosecutor disappeared too. They never found his body. She turned her wheelchair to face him. That's when I knew I had to destroy them. Whatever it took. Even if it meant destroying myself in the process. Do you regret it? Turning on your family? I regret not doing it sooner. I regret being blind for so long. I regret. Her voice broke. I regret that I'll never see my daughter again, never get the chance to tell her I'm sorry for not protecting her. Kingston reached out and took her hand. She knows. You can't know that. I'm a parent. Trust me. She knows. The second week of Augustina's stay, something unexpected arrived. Money. Kingston came home from work to find an envelope taped to his door. Inside was $10,000 in cash and a note in Augustina's handwriting. Consider this rent. More coming soon. He stormed into the apartment. What is this? Augustina looked up from where she was helping Mia with a math problem. Insurance money. From when my husband died. She made air quotes around the word husband. I can't take this. Why not? Because it's... Kingston lowered his voice, glancing at Mia. It's blood money. It's money that can pay your bills, buy your daughter new clothes, keep the lights on. Does it really matter where it came from? Yes. Augustina's expression hardened. Then think of it as payment for services rendered. You're my caretaker. I'm paying you for your time. I don't want your money. But you need it. She gestured around the shabby apartment. Kingston, there's no shame in accepting help. You saved my life. Let me help save yours. Kingston wanted to argue more, wanted to throw the money back in her face and maintain his pride. But then he saw Mia watching them, saw her shoes with the holes in the toes, saw the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter. Fine, he said at last. But this doesn't change anything. The first sign of danger. I know. I'll leave. Augustina wheeled closer. Thank you, Kingston, for your trust. That night, Kingston paid off 3 months of back rent, bought groceries that actually filled the fridge, and ordered Mia new shoes online. It felt wrong and right at the same time. More money came the following week. And the week after that. Always in cash, always with a short note. Kingston stopped protesting. He told himself it was temporary, that he'd pay it all back someday. But deep down, he knew he was lying to himself. Detective Santos hadn't stopped investigating. She'd been digging into the Castellanos family for weeks, and what she'd found terrified her. Vincent Castellanos had been one of the most ruthless drug traffickers in the country. His sons, Marcus and Daniel, had expanded the empire even further after his death, or they'd tried to. Something had happened recently. The organization was fracturing. Deals were falling through. Money was disappearing. And it all seemed to trace back to Augustina. Maria pulled up the woman's hospital records and cross-referenced them with missing persons reports. Nothing. It was like she'd vanished. Not dead. Maria would have heard about that. Just gone. Then she got a tip from a CI who worked for the Castellanos family. "They're looking for the old lady," the informant whispered over a burner phone. "Marcus is going crazy. Says she's not dead. Says she's got something that belongs to him." What does she have? Codes. Access codes to offshore accounts. She's the only one who can get to Vincent's money now. Marcus is hemorrhaging cash without it. Word is, he's put $1 million bounty on her head, alive only. Maria's blood ran cold. How many people know about this bounty? Everyone. Every crew, every affiliate, every two-bit criminal looking to make a score. There are hundreds of people looking for her right now. When the call ended, Maria sat in her car for a long time, thinking. Augustina Castellanos was out there somewhere, sitting on a fortune in blood money, with an army of criminals hunting her. And the only person who'd shown any connection to her was Kingston Morrison. Maria pulled up his file. Single father, worked at a warehouse, no criminal record. He'd given a statement about finding Augustina but hadn't had any contact with her since, or so he'd claimed. Time to pay Mr. Morrison a visit. Kingston was giving Mia a bath when he heard the knock at the door. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in a suit holding up a badge. His stomach dropped. "Mr. Morrison." "Detective Santos. I need to speak with you about Augustina Castellanos." Kingston glanced back toward his bedroom, where Augustina was presumably listening. He opened the door just wide enough to talk through. "I already gave a statement." "I know, but I have some follow-up." In a few times Detective Santos pushed past Kingston into the apartment before he could stop her. Her eyes swept the small space, taking in everything. The wheelchair ramp jerry-rigged over the front step, the medical supplies on the kitchen counter, the bedroom door slightly ajar. "She's here, isn't she?" Maria said quietly. Kingston's mind raced. He could lie, but what was the point? "Yes." "Do you have any idea what you've done? What kind of danger you've put yourself and your daughter in?" "I know who she is," Kingston said. "She told me everything." "Did she tell you there's $1 million bounty on her head? Did she tell you that every criminal in 3 states is looking for her right now?" Maria's voice rose. "Did she tell you that Marcus Castellanos has killed people for far less than harboring his mother?" From the bedroom, Augustina's voice rang out. "Let her in, Kingston. It's time." Maria strode to the bedroom, Kingston following helplessly. Augustina sat in her wheelchair by the window, her posture regal despite everything. "Detective Santos," Augustina said calmly. "I wondered when you'd find me. You need to come with me. Protective custody. Won't work. You know it won't. Marcus has people everywhere." Augustina folded her hands in her lap. "But I have a proposition for you." Maria crossed her arms. "I'm listening. I have access to all of Vincent's offshore accounts. Codes that only I know. $500 million in drug money. Detective. I'll give you everything. Account numbers, transaction records, names of every person who's been paid off, every dirty cop, every corrupt official. Everything you need to dismantle the Castellanos empire completely. In exchange for what? Protection for this man and his daughter." Augustina looked at Kingston. Witness protection. New identities. A fresh start somewhere far from here. "What?" Kingston said. "No. Absolutely not. I'm not uprooting MIA's entire life. Your life here is over anyway, Augustina said gently. The moment Maria walks out that door, the clock starts ticking. Marcus will find out she came here. He'll put the pieces together. You helped me, Kingston. That makes you an enemy. She's right, Maria said quietly. I'm sorry, but she's right. Kingston looked at MIA's bedroom door, behind which his daughter slept peacefully, unaware that her world was about to be torn apart again. This can't be happening. There's more, Augustina said, and something in her voice made Kingston look at her sharply. What do you mean? Augustina reached into her cardigan and pulled out a faded photograph. She held it out to Kingston with a trembling hand. The photo showed a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile, standing next to a man in a suit. The woman looked happy, in love, and she looked achingly familiar. That's Isabella, Augustina said softly. My daughter. And that's Thomas Morrison, her fiancé, the federal prosecutor my son's murdered. Kingston's world tilted. Morrison. But that's your father's name, Augustina finished. Thomas Morrison was your father, Kingston, which makes you my grandson. The silence in the room was deafening. That's impossible, Kingston whispered. My father was an accountant. He died of cancer 6 months ago. He changed his name after Isabella died. Went into hiding. Built a new life. Augustina's eyes filled with tears. I only found out after Vincent died, when I started going through his papers. He'd known all along where Thomas was. Had kept tabs on him for years, making sure he stayed away, stayed silent. And when I found out Thomas had a son, that I had a grandson. Her voice broke. I started watching you, following your life from a distance. I saw you struggling, saw you working yourself to death for your little girl. And I wanted so badly to help you, but I couldn't risk Marcus finding out. The beating, Kingston said slowly. That night on the road. You weren't just running from your sons. You were coming to find me. Augustina nodded. I was going to tell you everything. Offer you the money, the chance at a better life. But Marcus caught up to me first. Kingston sank into a chair, his mind reeling. All this time, you're my grandmother. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was afraid you'd send me away if you knew the truth. Afraid you'd want nothing to do with the Castellanos family. Augustina wheeled closer. But I'm telling you now because you deserve to know. And because you deserve the money, not as payment, but as your inheritance. What Vincent stole from the world, what he took through violence and fear, you can use it for good. You and Mia. Detective Santos cleared her throat. This is all very touching, but we have a bigger problem. If I take Augustina into custody, Marcus will come after her in prison. If I put her in witness protection, he'll find her eventually. And if I do nothing, he'll find all of you here. She looked between them. Unless what? Kingston asked. Unless we make him think she's already dead. It took 2 weeks to set everything up. Detective Santos brought in a small team of federal agents she trusted, people who'd been trying to take down the Castellanos organization for years. They worked in absolute secrecy, knowing that one leak could mean death for everyone involved. The plan was elaborate and dangerous. They would stage Augustina's death, a fire in Kingston's apartment building that would destroy any evidence. Dental records would be faked. A body would be found, actually a Jane Doe from the morgue who'd been the right age and build. Marcus would be invited to identify the remains. While Marcus believed his mother was dead, Augustina would testify before a grand jury. She'd hand over all the codes, all the evidence. The FBI would move simultaneously to arrest every key player in the Castellanos organization. And Kingston, Mia, and Augustina would disappear. New names, new histories, new lives, Maria explained. You'll be relocated somewhere across the country. You'll have financial support to start over, legitimate money from the federal program, not the offshore accounts. What happens to Vincent's money? Kingston asked. seized as criminal assets, distributed to victims of the drug trade, law enforcement, rehabilitation programs. Maria paused. It's not a perfect ending, but it's something. Kingston looked at Mia, who was playing with blocks in the corner, oblivious to the adult conversation. What do I tell her? The truth, Augustina said. Children are stronger than we think. She'll adapt. Will she, though? I've already put her through so much. Augustina wheeled over to where Mia was playing. Mia, honey, can I tell you something important? Mia looked up, her expression serious. Okay. Your daddy and I need to take you on an adventure. A very big adventure to a new place. And we are all going to go together. You, me, and your daddy. Would that be okay? Mia considered this. Will there be Rainbow? Their cat. Yes, Rainbow can come too. Will Mommy know where we are? The question hung in the air. Kingston exchanged a glance with Augustina. Would you want Mommy to know? Kingston asked gently. Mia shook her head slowly. She left us. She doesn't get to know. Kingston's heart broke and swelled at the same time. His daughter was so young, but already so wise about the ways the world could hurt you. Then it'll be our secret, he said, pulling her into a hug. Our family secret. Is Augustina family? Mia asked. Kingston looked at the woman who'd come into their lives like a storm, bringing danger, yes, but also connection and purpose and love. Yes, he said. She's family. The fire was set on a Tuesday night. Kingston, Mia, and Augustina were already safe in a federal safe house across town, watching the news coverage on television. Building evacuated safely, the reporter announced. Fire department responding. One casualty reported, an elderly disabled woman who was unable to escape in time. Kingston watched the flames consume the building that had been his home, destroying everything he owned except what he'd managed to pack in 2 suitcases. It should have felt like losing everything. Instead, it felt like being set free. Are you okay? Augustina asked softly. I don't know, Kingston admitted. Ask me in a year. 3 days later, Marcus Castellanos stood in the county morgue, looking at what he believed were his mother's remains. The federal agent watching through the two-way mirror said Marcus had shown no emotion, just nodded once and walked away. He bought it, Maria reported. We are clear to move forward. The arrests happened at dawn on a Friday. Simultaneous raids across 3 states. Marcus and Daniel Castellanos were taken into custody along with 47 other members of the organization. The news coverage was massive, the biggest drug bust in Pacific Northwest history. And somewhere in that chaos, 3 people ceased to exist. Kingston Morrison, Mia Morrison, and Augustina Castellanos were officially dead or disappeared. In their place, James Parker, his daughter Emma, and his mother Helen, relocating to a small town in Vermont to start over. The town of Willow Creek, Vermont, population 4,872, wasn't the kind of place where much happened, which was exactly why James Parker, formerly Kingston Morrison, had chosen it. He stood in the doorway of the house he now owned outright, paid for with legitimate money from a settlement with the federal government, watching his daughter Emma, formerly Mia, chase their cat Rainbow through the autumn leaves. She was 10 now, thriving in her new school, making friends, learning to play the violin. She'd adapted far better than he'd dared hope. Coffee's ready, Augustina called from the kitchen. She'd regained some limited mobility with intensive physical therapy, could stand with support, take a few steps with a walker. The doctors called it a miracle. Kingston called it pure stubbornness. He joined her in the bright, sun-filled kitchen that still felt like a dream. After years of struggling, of barely keeping his head above water, having a real home felt surreal. Letter came today, Augustina said, sliding an envelope across the table. From the Victims' Compensation Fund. Kingston opened it. Another check, another allocation of money that had once belonged to Vincent Castellanos' empire. The government had divided the seized assets among thousands of people whose lives had been destroyed by the drug trade. Kingston and Augustina had insisted their share go to addiction treatment programs and scholarships for children who'd lost parents to drug violence. But some had been set aside for them, enough to live comfortably, to give Mia, Emma, opportunities she'd never have had before. It still feels like blood money, Kingston said. Then we'll wash it clean, Augustina replied. By living good lives. By raising that little girl to be kind and strong. By helping others when we can. She reached across and squeezed his hand. We don't get to choose where we come from, Kingston. Only where we are going. He smiled. She'd stopped calling him James, even though that was technically his name now. In private, he was still Kingston, still her grandson, still the man who'd stopped on a rainy road to help a stranger. Marcus's trial starts next month, Augustina said, her expression darkening. They want me to testify in person. Will you? I don't know. Part of me wants to face him one last time. To look him in the eye and tell him that he lost. That I won. She paused. But another part of me just wants to let it go. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison regardless of whether I testify. Maybe that's enough. What does your therapist say? Augustina laughed. My therapist says I have complex feelings about my family of origin and need to process my trauma. Which is psychologists speak for your family is a nightmare and you're remarkably well-adjusted considering. Kingston laughed too. It felt good to laugh, to sit in a warm kitchen with sunlight streaming through the windows, to have problems that could be solved with therapy instead of running for their lives. Daddy! Grandma! Emma burst through the door, rainbow in her arms. Can we go to the fall festival? Please. Everyone at school is going. Kingston looked at Augustina, who nodded. Sure, Bug. Let's go. At the festival, Kingston watched Emma run from booth to booth, her face alight with joy. She'd been through so much, her mother leaving, their poverty, their sudden flight in the night, building a whole new identity. But she was resilient. She was thriving. You did good, Augustina said, appearing beside him with her walker. She's happy. We did good, Kingston corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. I think we saved each other, Augustina said softly. I was dying in that road, not just physically but spiritually. I'd lost everything, my daughter, my sense of self, any faith in humanity. And then you stopped. You saw me as a person worth saving. You are worth saving. So are you. She smiled. Your father would be proud of the man you've become. So would Isabella. Kingston felt his throat tighten. He'd learned so much about his father in the past 3 years, the man he'd been before he went into hiding, the love he'd shared with Isabella, the courage it had taken to start over with a new identity. Thomas Morrison had been a good man trapped in impossible circumstances. Just like Kingston had been. I'm thinking of going back to school, Kingston said suddenly. There's a community college in the next town. I could study. I don't know. Social work, maybe. Help other people who are struggling. Augustina's smile widened. I think that's a wonderful idea. And I was thinking of writing a book. About my life, about the choices I made, about finding redemption. She paused. Would you help me? I'd be honored. They stood together, watching Emma laugh as she tried to bob for apples, and Kingston felt something he hadn't felt in years, hope. Real, genuine hope for the future. That night, after Emma was asleep and the house was quiet, Kingston sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The stars were brilliant in the Vermont sky, undimmed by city lights. Augustina wheeled herself out to join him, a blanket draped over her lap against the autumn chill. Can't sleep? She asked. Just thinking. About that night. The rain. Finding you on the road. He turned to look at her. What would have happened if I'd kept driving? If I'd been too scared to stop? You would have kept being who you were, a good man struggling to survive. And I would have died alone in the rain, taking my secrets with me. But we wouldn't have found each other. No, Augustina agreed. We wouldn't have. It's strange, isn't it? How one decision can change everything. One moment of choosing to help instead of looking away.